Hiya folks, and welcome back to the series on becoming a full-time novelist. So you've decided to record an audiobook. My thoughts and prayers are with you. I've just gone through the process myself. I've just finished recording CharacterScan, my upcoming dark thriller for Penguin, about 105,000 words, and it is a great deal of work. Now folks, I've done this several times before. I don't presume to be an expert on audiobooks, but I've at least experienced the disasters, gone through the nightmares, and I hope that even if this is not comprehensive, I can at least steer you away from some of the worst of the nightmares, solve some headaches for you. So, let's get started. You will need a good quality microphone. Invest in something that tends to favor voice. So say a podcasting microphone, something with a bit of decent quality to it. Echo is your enemy. I found that the best way to get around this problem is not to insulate the room itself. I stay in a place that has big open walls all around. What I've done instead is I bought a foam box. Now if you want to get one of these off, say, Amazon, the name is quite long. They call them Portable Sound Recording Vocal Booth Box. But basically if you type in foam box for voice recording, it'll get you there. Portable Sound Recording Vocal Booth Box. What this is, it's a sponge box that you put your microphone inside of and it surrounds it on all sides. Now, a tip. Most echo comes from behind you. So, if you have got your microphone inside a foam box and you've got, say, some curtaining or foam behind you, you will largely have solved the problem. Nevertheless, if you have the option of a room where perhaps you can put the microphone on a soft bed, you have ruffled curtains, something like that, that will definitely help. The difference it makes having good sound insulation is incredible. The way that I would test this if I were you, do a recording and take it, say, to your car speakers or to some high-end set of speakers that you have access to, and play an audiobook from Audible. Then play it back to back with your own recording and listen to hear if it has a tinny zinging sound in the background. If it has that, you still have echo, you need to kill it. I used to use the program GarageBand directly on my Mac. I find that the program called Audacity is simpler and easier, and I think in many ways actually better. GarageBand, for instance, did a weird thing to me. I've just recorded my entire novel, and when you export the files, it exports them to stereo, even though I wasn't recording in stereo. And I've had to take them into Audacity and then export them as mono. You need mono files for most voice recording, unless you have some sort of sound effects within your novel, which is very unusual. Quick pointer, character voices. If you are reading your novel, one of the ways to do dialogue is to be a little less careful when it comes to the characters. Now, I gave myself a bit of a nightmare with this last novel. I had different accents from around the world. I had Scottish accents, I have Texan accents, I have a Texan with a lisp, just to add something for challenge sake. I have a dark, evil German chancellor who was raised with a French education, and several other things that I did to myself. Now, what I discovered is that my best recordings of dialogue are the ones where I'm less careful. So I will read quite carefully when I'm doing simple line-by-line narration. So it might be something like, Katrina spotted something in the distance and turned to John. What do you think that might be? It's a less careful delivery, and I find that works a great deal better. If you try to belabor a voice or belabor an accent, it's not as good. Scottish accent might be something like, and she looked into the looking glass. Whereas you want to read your lines carefully. She looked into the looking glass, and she thought to herself, I can't believe what I'm seeing. So it's a more casual delivery, and it's a bit faster. That might help you a little with the delivery of character voices. Now, let's get into some of the technicalities here. Your first step is to contact or go to the Audible site, audible.com, and there are the formatting guidelines. Now, please, dear author, beloved friend and kindred spirit, do not start recording until you have done that. Their guidelines are fairly simple, but they are given in great detail, and I will give some of them to you here. If you don't get it right, you will have to redo the entire book. I do not wish this on you or upon my worst enemy. I've done it before. Okay, so in terms of the files that you record, your chapters can't be longer than, I think it's an hour and a half. Most people don't have chapters that long anyway. Short is fine, doesn't matter how short, but it can't be over an hour and a half. When you save them with the correct labeling. Here's how they do it. They go 001 and then underscore intro. Then it's 002 underscore chapter 1. And chapter 1 is written in lowercase, and there are no spaces anywhere. 002 chapter 1, 003 chapter 2, and so on. If you want to, you can get more complicated than that, and you can have the chapter titles, but that's good enough. 001 chapter 2. If you're doing this yourself and not going through a commercial publisher, you will need a square version of your book cover designed according to their specs. So that's something you will need to take care of, unless you're being commercially published, in which case you go, "Mwah," and they do it for you, which is delightful. On platforms like Audible, you get your own author page. It's a good idea to fill it in with all of your details, particularly if you upload more than one book. If people enjoy one of your books, they can search for more. You receive payments, at least in the case of Audible, quarterly in the form of a check from Seattle. They also they do occasionally do direct deposits, but for some reason they seem to prefer checks, which I find a little backward, but that's been how it has worked. Now, in terms of file types, okay, here's the potential for your greatest nightmare. When you record into audio, you have to have a baseline of soft hiss noise in the background. If it is utterly silent, they'll actually reject it. Isn't that weird? Now, you don't set up this hiss, okay? You don't do a hiss on purpose. You don't sit yourself next to a fridge with a hiss in it. It's really just a matter of the settings when you record. And there's a weird little problem here that I always face. You can either have the baseline hiss elevated, or you can have the peaks low enough. But if you try to edit those two together, they tend to be in opposition to one another. So it's worth trying to get this right before you begin. They will only accept two types of file. This is Audible, which is probably the biggest one. You send it to them as a 16-bit 44.1K WAV file, or you send them MP3s at 192 kbps or higher. Okay? They will not accept anything else. You've got to do that, and it's got to be in mono. Now, in terms of the peak levels and so forth, this is getting a little technical, but once you record, you'll be able to find this. If you're using Audacity, the way that you do it is you select your file and you go to Effects, Amplify, and you can bring down the peak levels. I've just had to solve this problem. The recommended audio range is minus 24 dB, which I think stands for decibels, I'm not sure, to minus 14 dB. Okay? So they want it somewhere in that range. Now, if you're doing this on Audacity, you go to Effects, Amplify, and you can actually bring it down until it gets to exactly within that range. Then you export the file, and it should do that. The recommended audio peak is minus 6 dB. I seem to have gotten the feedback from Penguin that they prefer it not to be above minus 3 dB. So that seems to be the cutoff wall. They also add to this, do not brick wall limit compress. I have no idea, but don't do it, it's bad. And the recommended noise floor, which is kind of that background hum or hiss, should not be greater than minus 60 decibels. Okay, so if it's higher than that, you have a problem. And it is very difficult to bring the peaks down and to bring that up. It's easier to do one or the other. So you want to get this right. But they don't want absolute zero. Good luck to you. Dougie has got his Audible badge, but he suffered his way through it. So if you are wanting to interact with Audible, contact this person. Your email address is audible_metadata@audible.com. And or you can also go onto a site called acx.com. Now, these folks work with audiobooks and Audible on one side and publishers on the other and so forth, and they have a way of checking the levels. Now, I'm going to level with you here and point out that I've never gotten this right, but the people at Penguin do. So I send my stuff to Penguin, they use this online, acx.com, and there is a way of checking that your audio levels are correct. Do go and have a tinker around there. I can't seem to get it right myself. It is, in fact, if I actually just pull it up here, it is acx.com production resources. And if you sort of take a look down there, they've got a little thing where you can actually check your levels. As I say, I haven't been able to get that to work, but that should lead you in the right direction. Once you've got the entire book recorded, and it is a big job, I genuinely mean this, I've actually learned to sort of lower my voice and do a relaxed voice when I read, just in order to make sure I don't lose my voice. What you do is you save all of your exported files into one folder. The folder itself will have the title of the book and audio files. So in my case, it would be CharacterScan audio files. And then once you go into that folder, you will have all of your files saved as 001 underscore intro, 002 underscore chapter 1, and so forth. If you are doing this yourself, you will then have instructions from Audible, which you can get off their website, and again, that's why I say start there, on how to upload to Audible. And they use a program called FileZilla. It's a bit of a faff, this thing. You have to figure out how to upload all of your files, but that will be your starting point. You upload your files to FileZilla. Once you've done that, they also tend to give you the option of a retail sample. So this will be, if you go onto like the Audible store and you're clicking around on books and you want to listen to one, it will be the chunk that you listen to. You want that to be something good, something captivating, perhaps with a bit of dialogue, perhaps with a bit of twists and turns, whatever you think is the good bit of your novel. About 4 minutes long, it says here cannot exceed 5 minutes in length. And that one will be titled title underscore sample. So for example, in my case, it would be CharacterScan underscore sample. I'm probably going to do that today. Now folks, as I said, this is not comprehensive. It's just a little quick guide to the things that tend to go wrong and the issues that you could fix up front if you're paying attention and know how to do it. If this is something that you enjoy doing, it is deeply gratifying work. But folks, it is hard slog. I often say that recording the audiobook is actually harder than writing the book in the first place. Nevertheless, you don't have to have an excellent voice. You don't have to sound like a narrator. Often, just the fact that you are the author of the book is enough to sell it. There's something enjoyable about hearing how the author meant the book to sound. So when you read the book, if you don't have a perfect voice, don't worry too much. Just make sure that you put vocal emphasis into the emotions and make it sound interesting. Another quick technical note, you need 2 seconds of silence on either side of your voice when you start and stop. So, for example, you hit record, and then you allow silence, and then you say, CharacterScan by Douglas Kruger, read by the author. Copyright Penguin Random House 2023. Production copyright Douglas Kruger. 2 seconds of silence. Now, if you actually listen to CharacterScan, that is the intro. That is the format required. You need that up front. At the end, I do something like I say, this has been an audio production of CharacterScan, read by the author. Copyright Penguin Random House 2023, production copyright Douglas Kruger. 2 seconds of silence, and then I stop recording. So I do that for every single chapter. At the beginning, a couple of seconds of silence, begin to read. When you get to the end, a couple of seconds of silence, and end. I tend to allow mistakes to go when I'm recording. So I'll deliver a line like, Katrina was aware of her gift, even in the embryonic semi-consciousness of her mother's and then my voice breaks and I go through puberty. And then I do it again, I pause. Katrina was aware of her gift, even in the embryonic semi-consciousness of her mother's womb. It wasn't supposed to be that way. And I record the whole thing, mistakes and all. I don't go back, it's too time consuming. So you record the entire thing, then you go back and cut and basically edit out the mistakes and pull back the voice line so that it lines up. Listen very carefully for background noises, thumps and bumps and things like that. If you have any, it will not go out. Word of caution if you're using the foam box that I mentioned. If the top of your microphone touches the foam box, okay, you may have problems with like knocking on the top there. Test that. Better if the microphone does not touch the top of the box. Any bangs, booms, scratching sounds, you will either have to edit out or, and this is more likely, you will have to do it again. Because you will find that it will be in the middle of words, in the middle of sentences, and they'll simply reject it. So, I hope that saves you many weeks of work. I wish someone had shared this information with me right at the beginning. I've had to find all of this out the excruciatingly hard way. I wish you luck. I will pray for your soul, and enjoy the process. The more you enjoy it, the more it comes across in your voice. You don't have to project the way you do in public speaking. you can drop it right down, use the microphone, and keep your voice as calm and low as you can in order to keep your voice, otherwise you'll simply lose it. I'll share a little tip with you. My sort of mantra when I record is the audio voice of a guy who read one of my favorite Dean Koontz books. And there's this phrase that goes, fireflies, fireflies in a windstorm. And he reads it with this sort of husky, down-low voice. And I thought, that's the voice I want to use. I'm not copying his, but the style of delivery. I would lean sort of quite close into the microphone, making sure that I've got a cover to avoid pops. And I would read the book. Katrina was aware of her gift, well into. And it's down low and it's a little husky. And that means I can emphasize, but go back down low again. And then I pause between sentences, give myself time to breathe. It's a relaxed reading. It's not a ballet. You don't have to rush through it from one end to the other. It's fairly straightforward, fairly relaxed, with emphasis in all the right places. Hope that helps, folks. Come back for more of the tips. CharacterScan launches in 1 month's time, and hopefully the audiobook will launch at the same time.